Hello students and welcome to your week 4 online lab mole equivalencies lab how-to video. You'll see on the screen I already have the lab document open as well as the gizmo. Now if you don't have all this stuff situated and uploaded, you're going to follow these steps to upload your gizmo. Keep in mind as you get into Explore Learning and you find the moles gizmo, you do not need any of the material that's within the website. You just need the gizmo because we're going to use this document in order to complete this lab. So all you need to do is launch the gizmo and it's going to pull up a screen that looks similar like this. Okay. There's going to be a few parts to this lab. The first part is going to be atomic mass and molar mass. And we're going to do this by choosing the Avogadro constant tab. So if I go to my screen, you'll see that I am in my Avogadro constant tab. I do not have this half screened because gizmos do not allow you to click on the links if it's small and half screened. If you have two monitors, it should work, but if you only have one monitor, halving the screen doesn't always work. Now, when you're in the Avogadro constant tab, you're going to have quite a few options to choose from in order to complete the lab. And before I even go through that and show you what to do, I want to talk about what you're doing here on the left side of this data table. Now you'll have 3 trials you're going to do. You have one here, you have one here, and then one here. The first trial is going to involve just an element, and there's 4 elements you can choose from. You can choose copper, carbon, sulfur, or aluminum, and you only need to choose one. So whichever one you end up doing, delete the others off of the row so that way you remember which one you're doing. And then you're going to go through the steps here and I'll show you what those look like with an example. When you're on your second trial, you're going to pick one compound and it's going to be between these 2. And you're going to delete whichever one you're not doing. And then it's the same thing down here. So ultimately you'll have 3 different substances that you're going to walk through the steps that I'm going to show you in order to complete the lab. Now you'll notice the next piece says number of each element. With elements, we don't have to do it because it's just one. But when we get to compounds, it's going to be counting those atoms within the formula like we've been practicing. Now you'll notice that there are 2 different colors to my 4 columns here. I have use nanoscale and then use mass scale. So let me show you what that looks like. This is the nanoscale view, and this is the mass scale. So that's the difference. When you're using the nanoscale view, that's going to be in that kind of red-pink column here. And then the actual scale here is going to be your green columns. So I'm going to go through an example of how to go about doing part 1. I'm going to use a compound that you guys are not using. And that's going to show you how to work through this. If you want to follow along on the gizmo when you do your first element or your first compound, you can feel free to do so. But I'm going to show you what this will look like for part 1. So on here you have a drop down, and that's going to give you the options to choose the different substances that you're using. I'm going to click on potassium permanganate. That is mine. That's one that you will not do. That is just for me. Now when I look at potassium permanganate, if I were to complete my data table based on number of each element right here, I have 1 potassium, I have 1 manganese, and I have 4 oxygen. So that's what it means to count the elements within your compound. Now the next piece asks for the atomic mass for each individual elements. So in order to find this on the nanoscale, I'm going to drag my first element and I'm going to put it on the scale. Now this gives me a number, and I can add that number into my document, and I would put K equals 39.098 U. And that's going to be what I would type right here. I'm not going to put that in there because it'll save to the document, but I would put that right here for my compound. And again, this is going to be for your element. So if you're following along and let's say you're doing copper, you're going to write the atomic mass that you get for copper from this onto that column. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to use the other elements as well. So manganese, I have 54.938 U, and then I'm also going to get the mass of oxygen. and you'll put those individual ones for your compounds down here. Your element will just have one. Now the next step is getting the molar mass, and this one is also easy. We're going to take the element off, and we're going to drag the compound onto the nanoscale, and this is going to give us the molar mass of the compound or element that we're putting on the scale. So I would go back into my document and record this for my molar mass in my column. All right, now that uses nanoscale, so now we're going to go to the mass scale, and this one's a little bit different. You'll notice it says total atoms, formula units measured, and total mass in grams. So for the second part of part 1, where we're going to be using the actual mass scale, the goal is to get the mass on the scale to match the mass that you see on the nanoscale. And you're going to do that by adding whatever it is that you're measuring, that would be found over here, to the weigh boat that's on the scale. Now the only way that you can change how much you add is by changing this sliding piece here, and the slider changes only the exponent. So right now you'll see it says 10, and this says 10. If I wanted it to be higher, I could drag this, and I would see 19, 19. So you'll notice that this stays the same. The exponent is the only thing that changes. Now, when you want to start adding material and you find the exponent you want to use, you're going to hit add units. It'll scoop material into the weigh boat and it will change your mass on the scale. If you keep going, it'll keep changing the mass. Now, let's say you accidentally add too much material. So let's say I accidentally add too much and I want to take some away. You would simply hit remove units and it would take back whatever was just added. So again, you're going to keep adding material using this slider to change how much you're adding until you can match the mass here and here. And now by matching the mass, I mean get as close as you can. Doesn't have to be exact, but I want you to get close. And then once those two mass values match, you're going to record the total formula units or molecules that you find here, along with the mass on your scale on the Word document in the column that's green. Once you have that done, make sure before you get out of this screen, you go to Tools, Screenshot, and then it'll take a screenshot and you can paste that into your Word document where it tells you to. So that's how you will complete the last columns in part 1. And then when you're ready to move on, you'll exit out. And that'll give you the ability to change tabs. Part 2 is a little bit different. So when we're ready for part 2, we're going to go to conversions. And that's the tab in the center. And you'll notice it's a little bit different setup. Similar to part 1, we're going to be doing one element and two compounds. You're just going to be redoing the ones you picked in part 1. So you don't have to go through the picking process. Just simply redo the ones you've already done in part 1. And then you'll notice towards the right of that, it has moles already selected for you. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that. Just like I did before, I'm going to choose potassium permanganate because that's the example that I'm not allowing students to pick. And again, if you want to walk through the steps as we go, you are welcome to do so. So now the first thing I'm going to do is look and see what my mole settings are. And I'm starting with 1 mole. So if I go back to here, here's my amount, and you'll notice it says 1 mole of potassium permanganate, which is what I want. So I'm going to hit start. And that's going to give me 1 mole of potassium permanganate in a jar that I can use. I'm going to take this jar, drag it over to the arrow, and that'll dump it in to my formula unit counter. So you'll see it gives you a number for your formula units, or it might give you a value for molecules depending on what it is you're measuring. And I want you to type that number here. And then you're going to do total mass in grams. I'm going to take that glass container, drag it over the arrow. It'll dump into the plastic boat that is on top of the scale. And that's going to give you the mass of the substance you have. So once you get that value, go ahead and come to here and you're going to type total mass in grams right in the row that you're measuring. Now you'll notice the next piece, it says to go to 0.6 moles. So if I go back here, I'm going to reset. And then I'm going to make sure I have potassium permanganate still selected and moles. And this time I'm going to change this to 0.6. Just like that. Hit start. I'm going to grab this, drag it over the arrow, get my formula units, type that in here, grab my glass container, put it down here, pour it out, grab it again, bring it over to the scale, dumps it into the boat, and you get a mass value from the scale. And you're going to type that mass value into your document right where you need it. So you're going to do that for your individual choices, and you'll notice that there's different mole values here. So you're going to go through and complete that as you follow the steps for that piece. Once you're done, we're going to use the data from the lab to answer these questions. So that's why it's important for you to follow the steps appropriately and get these values. And then again, use your information to answer your post-lab questions. If you have any questions, if you need any help while you're getting going on this thing, just let me know. Otherwise, good luck. And then when you're done, go ahead and submit it.